Welcome back to Live With. I'm your esteemed host, Dave Palumbo, and tonight we're here with our very good friend and Australian promoter extraordinaire, Tony Doherty. Welcome back.
Well, it's nice to be back. It's been a little while, so it's nice to hear your voice, Dave.
Tony, the last time we had you on, we usually have you on the radio, and now we've upped our technology a little bit, so now we got you all the way from Australia via. In the old days, we'd say via satellite, but it's via Skype now. It doesn't sound quite as elaborate, but it's good to have you here. It's probably very early in the morning there, I assume.
It's 9 a.m., so I've already been in and done my morning workout, which is a ritual for me every morning, and ready to take on the day.
Tony, I remember back a number of years ago, probably over 10 years ago, the first time I had you on a radio show. You were running the Australian Grand Prix pro bodybuilding show out there in Melbourne, and you were trying your hardest to get athletes to come to your show, and you would dazzle them, and you would pick them up at the airport, you'd make them food, and you were always the athlete's promoter, so to speak. And over the years you've evolved, and I mean, now you're running the Arnold Australia. This is going to be your second year coming up. I mean, you have really risen in the ranks, so to speak, and really elevated that show from like a local show to something huge. I have to imagine it's got to feel great.
Yeah, it's the best thing I've ever done in business. It was a huge challenge, to go from the first time I did the pro bodybuilding show was a huge challenge and it nearly wiped me out. But then the second year was easier. And then after, 10 years of doing that, we turned it into an expo called FitX. And the first time we did that was also overwhelming. And but we got through it and it got easier after that. And then when we turned FitX into the Arnold Classic, that was a huge step. But I guess doing the FitX Expo was like an apprenticeship for me. And once we got through that, we're ready to do an Arnold. And, look, we doubled the numbers, doubled the exhibitors and had 10 times more sports and so on. And, when it was all said and done this year, it was probably the most satisfying thing I've ever done. So it was great. I'm pretty happy about it, Dave, and just a great opportunity to work with the Arnold team worldwide. And it's been life-changing, man. I haven't stopped still since.
Funny thing about you, Tony, and a lot of people don't know this, is not only are you the promoter, you're the MC of the show. You take all the tickets. You do everything there. You run around. You organize everything. You get the venue. You get the athletes. You have your hands on every single aspect of everything that goes on at that show, which I have to believe is overwhelming to a certain degree. But I know you love it also on the other side of the coin.
Yeah, I love it, and I know things get done when I do that. But obviously, the Arnold was a little bit of a different ball game. So I had to employ a lot more staff, and I had to let go of a lot of stuff. And the MC was fun. It's something I like doing, but even that, I'm just going to have to step back more and more from that each year. I mean, in the previous expos, I was always there to open the doors on time and say this sport's got to start here and this one's got to start there. Whereas with the Arnold this year, I had to let go of a lot of stuff and delegate, and I've got a great team in place. And I'm getting better, Dave, at letting go of stuff and delegating, because you can't do everything, and you just got to surround yourself with good, capable and smart people. See, I realised I wasn't that smart, so I'll just get a lot of smart people around me and learn from them.
You got a great crew over there in Australia. I've seen them in action, and they're very trustworthy, and they're very loyal to you, which is always great as well. What was it like when when you first were approached to do an Arnold Classic Australia? Did Arnold pick up the phone and call you himself, or did someone else reach out to you?
The way it happened is I got an email from Rafael Santoya saying that he wanted to meet me at the Olympia. So 2 years ago, this all happened, just over 2 years. So the Olympia 2013. And we went to this breakfast meeting. There was a lot of officials there, and he sat me next to Bob Lorimer. And I'm thinking, that's a little odd, Do you know Bob? No. I'd met him over the years, but I didn't know him at all. And then we went into a private meeting where it was just Rafael, Bob and myself, and then they said, look, the next continent Arnold wants to do is Australia, and he's asked us to reach out to you because he knows you've got the best sport and fitness expo there and a very successful pro show, and that Jim Mannion had recommended to them that just if you're going to do it in Australia, you have to do it with Tony. That's your only choice, not in a standover sort of way, but as in a functional sort of way. So Jim had really given me his highest recommendation, and my publicist here, and I found out later that Arnold had done some background checks and talked to people that we knew and this and that, and they'd really done their homework on me and liked what they saw. And then, of course, they said, do you want to change your... So originally I thought they were going to say, look, let's go do an Arnold Classic in Australia separate from what you're doing. But as the meeting wore on, I would see they wanted to kind of patch over my current expo, which was like, my child. And at first I didn't want to resist because I wanted an opportunity to work with Arnold, but I had to make a decision based on good business, not just based on, stardom and ego and that sort of thing. So, look, I actually thought it through for a little while. Then that was in, September was the Olympia. Then Bob Lorimer came over at the start of January to inspect Melbourne and the facilities and saw that it was a great sporting city. And, in fact, as you've been here several times, Dave, the convention centre's right on the river in downtown. We've got huge sporting facilities all around us and so on. And he fell in love with the place and he said, I'm not going home until you sign up. So, a few meals and a few drinks later and I committed. And, that was January. Then I had to go to the Arnold Columbus that year. And I got there and they said, you've got to come into this meeting. It's all the world partners in there to meet Arnold and so on. So we get in there and Jim Lorimer was making his speech. And it was funny because there was a table set up like it was like a banquet sort of style. So there was 10 tables in there and each one had 10 placemats, knives and forks and cutlery and all that sort of thing. And a sign on the table said it was South Africa, who were bringing their bid in for the first time. Brazil, Spain, Columbus had 2 tables. There was a Chinese delegation trying to get it over the line for China even back then. They had a table of 10. So I walked in. There's this table with Australia written on it. I was there on my own. So, so Amanda was there too, and she was competing. So she's about to run on stage to do her first figure show at the Arnold as a pro. She'd done fitness years ago. And I found out the meeting with Arnold, the Arnold lunch and her walking on stage was at the same time. Now, I've got a situation. So what I did, I put it on my suit. I had a special suit made for it because I knew it was going to be big. I ran into the venue at 11:30, watched her walk on stage, blew her a kiss, then literally ran back through the crowd to get back to the Arnold lunch. And of course, by then, there's 50,000 people and I can't move and I can't really find it. So I walked into the lunch room and there's my table, Team Australia, and I was a bit embarrassed because I was the only one there. And then Arnold, of course, walks in the room. He's got a great presence and he said, what are you doing there on your own? Come and sit with me. So I went and sat with him and Jim Lorimer made a speech and he said, and next he said, I'm going to get all my partners up to make a speech, which I didn't know, I hadn't prepared for. And so I thought, shit, me, Dave, I MC everything. I'm a public speaker. I do motivational speaking for a living. I'm never lost for words, but when you're in a room with less than 50 people and you've got to make a speech for Arnold, that's a little overwhelming. And I had to really dig deep, and that was the time to commit and all the rest of it. So of course Raphael got up and made the first speech. He's a politician, he's a professional speech maker, so he killed it. And then the Rio people got up and Anna's just learned English, so it's kind of cute the way she speaks, and she smiles her way through it. She did a terrific presentation, and that was good. And then the Chinese people got up, and this guy was really angry. He had issues, and he didn't speak any English at all, and he had an interpreter, and even she was embarrassed by his aggression. So I'm thinking, fuck, I hope I get to go after these guys because they're terrible, and then it'll make me look better. So this guy's like, swastika, and I'm like, whoa. He got out of the wrong side of the bed, and then his translator would say, we're all very late to welcome Schwarzenegger. And, I always tell you a joke when I come on your show. So then he looks at her and off he goes again, and his hands, he's going red and he's just getting all crazy. And I'm thinking, this is great. And then the interpreter would look at him and she'd look at the floor and she'd just say, we can't wait to welcome you to China. And it's obviously not what he had said. So this went for about 10 minutes and I'm looking at Arnold, he's looking at me, everyone's looking at each other. And they finished and, no one clapped. And then it was like one of these ones. And then Jim Lorimer said, we'll get Tony up from Australia. And I walked up to the podium still not knowing what I was going to say. And it was a really overwhelming moment. So I just told them about how I got into it and And you don't want to, with Arnold, obviously everyone runs up to him and says, oh, Arnold, I've watched all your movies, I'm your biggest fan, I started lifting weights, blah, 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 blah. And he must hear that 100 times a day, right? So I didn't want to go down that track. So I told my story, and I just said that I went to the Arnold Classic in 1992, and I got to ask Jim Lorimer one question, and he said, what was that? And I said, I asked you, when do you start working on next year's event? Because the first time I went to the Arnold Classic in 92, that's the time I knew that I was going to bring it to Australia one day. I didn't know how or when. I just walked in there, instead of going, oh, wow, look at all the booths, so-and-so's here. I'm just going, I've got to figure out how to do this. One day I'm going to bring it to Australia. This is a true story. And I got to ask Jim Lorimer one question. And that question was, when do you start working on next year's expo? He looked me straight in the eye and he goes, Monday morning. I went, wow, I'm not at that level of maturity just now. I'm going to go away and figure this out. So I told them that story, and I said that I understood that. I said I was going to go straight home, and I didn't promise the world. I didn't say we're going to have the best event you've ever seen, anything else. I just looked at Arnold and Jim and said, I'll give you my word that I'm going to work 365 days straight, and I'm not going to rest. I'm going to do my very best, and I won't let you down. And they all clapped, and that was the time. That it was fully committed, and had a little hug with Arnold, and we sort of clicked, and I've been traveling with him kind of full time ever since. So there you go.
Tony, is it kind of like a little weird, because I'm sure, like you said, you grew up, watching Arnold pumping iron, his movies. Now you kind of like, hanging out with the guy smoking cigars. I mean, that's got to be kind of wacky, right?
Yeah, it is. It's kind of pinch yourself kind of stuff. But look, a lot of people now, of course, they know I'm Arnold's partner. What's he really like? And I always say, Arnold's everything you would hope he would be. Like, I've met a lot of superstars, and when the cameras are on, some of them are unbelievable, and they've got all this charisma and everything, but the cameras go off and then they talk down to their staff, or they're not interested in people, whatever. And Arnold's not like that. When the cameras are off, he's exactly the same. And he's a very curious guy. So when he asks you, how are you doing, and what are you doing, what's going on with the gyms, he's genuinely interested. So it's gone to the point now where he's been a great mentor and given me some seriously good life and business advice, and kind of taken me under his wing. In fact, it's been unbelievable. I would have just been happy if he knew my name. So to go from there to sort of doing all the security with him around the world, to travelling to different countries just to catch up, and of course smoking some stogies with him, it's a dream come true, really it is.
Now, be honest now, Tony. I'm going to ask you this question. Answer honestly. Have you had a pose down with Arnold yet? Because I know Arnold likes to have, all his buddies pose down a lot of times, when you guys are in private.
We haven't had a pose down, I'm going to be honest. Not just...
Arnold...
We're too busy talking.
All right. We have a big announcement. It was kind of leaked a little bit because the Lorimer camp kind of sent out a press release on Monday, but a lot of people don't know the news. If Australia wasn't big enough, the Arnold Australia, this is only the second year coming up. You've already taken on a new second continent. Not even a contest. I have to call it a continent, because the Arnold Australia is coming to fruition in 2016, and you are one of the co-promoters. How did that come about? Please tell us the story.
You said Arnold Australia. You're talking about Arnold Asia. Well,
excuse me, Arnold Asia. My mistake.
So, just so we don't confuse the listeners even more. So how that came about was, Arnold's dream and Jim Lorimer's passion was to have an Arnold Classic in every continent. So they did the USA, obviously, successfully for 20-something years. And then, when Arnold got out from being governor, he said, now let's take this show on the road. Let's spread this fitness crusade worldwide. Obviously, Arnold doesn't need the money, so he does it because this is his real passion, bodybuilding and fitness. And he always wanted to make the world a healthier and fitter place. I've talked to him extensively about that. It's about this fitness crusade worldwide. So they went and did Madrid. And they said, well, that's the only one we'll do in Europe. Let's do one in every continent, just one. So then following the success of Madrid, which we just did our 5th edition over there, and Rafael and Nieves do an incredible job of Madrid. But, of course, Europe's a slightly different market than anywhere else. So then he said his next one, that was a startup event, he said his next one he'd like to do would be South America. So they chose Brazil. But this is where it got good for me, is that they said, well, instead of us doing a new startup event, which is very difficult, let's go and find the promoters that have got the best sport and fitness expo in Brazil and join with them. So they found Anna and Felipe, and this is a big shout out and credit to Bob Lorimer, because he's the one who's put all the rest of the continents together with his relationships and his skill of finding the right people. So we've just done our 3rd edition of Arnold Brazil, and that's been a tremendous success, doubling in size each year. Then Arnold said, let's go to Australia. That's our next continent. And thank God I was the guy that he chose. And once again, it was made better sense to take over an existing expo than to try and take them on and come in here with a startup product. So that's the Arnold Australia. Then he said the next continent's Africa. So we're proud to announce our first Arnold Classic Africa is in Johannesburg, South Africa in May next year. So 2016 is the first edition of that, and Wayne Price and his team are doing a terrific job with that. So now there's only one continent left, Asia. And this is really, the final piece of the puzzle. And I think from Jim Lorimer's point of view, this is the jewel in the crown. This is the one. He's been very, very careful in giving it out, and there's been bids from several countries across Asia really, really wanting it to bring to Korea, Singapore, Malaysia, mainland China, with Beijing and Shanghai all putting in bids. So I've been up to Hong Kong a couple of times over the last couple of years with that in mind. I wonder what Hong Kong would be like. And also went to Shanghai and had a look at that and didn't think it was the right fit, because if you do it in mainland China, particularly somewhere like Shanghai, one, the visas are a nightmare. So for all of you guys and all of the athletes to have to hand your passport in for 2 or 3 weeks and hope you can get a visa, it's very difficult. English is not very well spoken up there. Transport's a nightmare. And if you did it there, my belief it was always going to be Arnold China, not Arnold Asia, because it's too hard for all the other Asian and Middle East countries to go to. The big advantage with Hong Kong was the geography is it's really the hub of Asia. And you don't need a visa to go into Hong Kong, Dave. So you, Johnny, the whole team can just come to Hong Kong. No visa, no issue at all. Anyone can come in.
Been there, Tony. So yeah, it's a great city.
It's a New York. It's a New York of Asia, and you've got 7 or 8 million people in a very, very densely populated area. You've got nearly 1 million expats there. This is what people don't realise. So between Australia, 100,000, Canada, 150,000, UK, several hundred thousand, US, several hundred thousand expats working there. There's nearly 1 million Westerners living and working in Hong Kong, and they're not waiters and bartenders, they're merchant bankers. So there's so much money there. Then it's really accessible from all those countries we mentioned: Malaysia, Singapore, Japan, Taipei, Thailand, Korea, and so on. But also from the Middle East. And as you know, we've got some great bodybuilders and great supporters up in the Middle East, in Kuwait and Dubai, and of course Egypt and all these countries, which can travel easily to Hong Kong. So to me, it made perfect sense that it's the hub of Asia. That's where we should do the Arnold Classic Asia. So if you want to call it a bid, because several people were trying for it. So I headed up the bid for Arnold Hong Kong. I've put together a fantastic team with a partner up there and one from here, and what I believe to be a great proposal to do an Arnold Classic. We found an incredible venue. There's a place called Asia World Expo right by the airport. So you fly in, it's one train stop to the venue, and there's 2 massive hotels there that support both the airport and the venue. And it's only a 20-minute ride into the main part of Hong Kong if you want to go into the city.
Did you jam yourself into Tony? Did you have to jam yourself into the subways there? They have the greatest mass transit, but there's like a gazillion people on those trains there.
Yeah, there is. We did a little bit of that, but mostly we had cars and we had drivers and all that sort of thing organised. So I've got a really good team up there, Dave. So that's how it worked out. And in fact, Arnold's office called and asked if I could come up to Shanghai with Bob. What was that like? Before probably July, August, we went up to Shanghai to have a look, and we met Arnold up there. He was up there for the Asian premiere of Terminator Genesis, which did over 100 million up there immediately. It was a great success. So we went up and met him in Shanghai and went and looked at all the facilities and that sort of thing, and gave advice on that and became part of that team. But I kept saying, look, I don't think this is the right place. I think Hong Kong. So to be completely honest, I thought that we had missed out on it. And then a couple of weeks, 4 weeks ago, Arnold was in Malaysia and said that he'd get a private jet down to Hong Kong to meet my team and look at the venue. So Mr. Resourceful, I had to get a venue to open up at 10 o'clock at night, lay out the red carpet, get all their staff to come back to work, which they were fantastic.
You get there? How did you get there?
I didn't go. I had my partner.
Oh, okay.
You know what? It was so short a notice. I could have got, when I got the call, I would have had to go to the airport within 3 hours. And it still wasn't confirmed that Arnold would be there. So I thought, I'm better here on the ground, making sure the venue's opened and everything, because otherwise I would have flown into, you know, an abyss of nothing, and I would have failed. And with Arnold, you can't fail, of course. So I just rolled the dice and said, you know what, I'm better off to stay here and pull all the strings from here that I need to pull, which worked out perfect. And so Arnold flew in. My business partner Richard up there picked him up in a car and took him to the venue. They did a great job showing it to him, and he said, look, it works. It's a great venue. It's a great city, great location. I'm certain if Tony's involved, we've got a good partner and so on. And then he put it back to Jim Lorimer and said, now it's your decision. So last week, we flew up there, and Jim and Bob Lorimer flew in, you know, and bless him, you know, Jim's, I think, 89, and his energy level is unbelievable. In fact, they were coming in just for 3 days. They got snowed in at Chicago, had to go down through Dallas the next day, so they only ended up being there for 36 hours. And in that time, we had to meet all the government officials, which was very important to Jim, and also introduce him to our team. And if we passed those 2 tests, then we were back in the game. And by the time he left, he shook hands with us and said, it's all yours. Yeah, good luck. But we wanted Arnold wanted in 2016, so don't mess around.
Wow. So basically, it was Jim Lorimer's decision. Arnold deferred to Jim and allowed Jim to come look at it. I'm shocked. I can't get my dad to go to Florida. Jim Lorimer at 89 is going to Hong Kong for 36 hours. Unbelievable.
You know, and I've worked very closely with Bob Lorimer, who's a huge supporter of mine and also a great business partner. So I think he had a great influence in it, and he believes in us. And yeah, but now, of course, then we get the call and it's done. The press release goes out, and now I'm like, oh, what have I done? You know, how are we going to figure this out? Because it's a huge undertaking to do it in another country and to do a startup event. So it's going to take you know, miracles to get it done, but no doubt we will get it done. I'm really confident with our team up there. We've got fantastic support from the tourism board, and Hong Kong as a community wants it in Hong Kong. So I'm sure we're going to get mainstream support up there that we don't get anywhere else, and also corporate support. So here we go. It's another ride, Dave. And I mean, the good thing is, from Arnold Classic Australia through to the end of August is exactly 5 months. So we can get a lot done in 5 months, I'm sure. So look, it's a big announcement. You know, we'll be the only promoters that have effectively got 2 Arnold Classics, and there is no more continents. That's it. The Arnold Classic is done, dusted. We'll be doing 6 every year.
Hold on, Tony. Hold on. What
We're
about
Antarctica?
What about Antarctica? Come on, man.
You know what?
You can take that one, Tony.
Palumbo to do the Antarctica version.
You're closest. You're closest down there.
Yeah, right.
Tony, let's talk about some of the Grand Prix that you put on over the years, some of the great shows. Answer this question: what was the greatest Australian pro show you ever put on? And give me the lineup and the placings.
Okay, I'd have to say, well, there's been a couple for different reasons, but the real standout one that the fans love the most, and you know, I've loved all of them, but you know, some years the lineups have been a little thin. But 2004 was incredible because we had Chris Cormier, Dexter Jackson, Johnny Jackson, King Kamali, Craig Titus, Marcus Rule in the top 6. And it was when Titus and Kamali were feuding. You know, they're on getbig.com and all these different websites arguing flat out they're going to kill each other, and you know, wife jokes and mother jokes, and it was just really, really disrespectful and horrible, and they generally didn't like each other. So of course I did a postcard, like a boxing style postcard, Kamali versus Titus, and I sent it to both of them. Then I'd call them up and I'd say, hey Titus, you know, Kamali doesn't like you very much, he says he's going to kick your ass. And I'd call Kamali and say, Titus just said, you know, you live in your mother's basement and you're no good, and he's going to beat you up on stage and this sort of thing. So I made it worse. And of course, the publicity that that brought was fantastic. And then on the poster, we had Chris Cormier and Marcus Rule on the main poster. So it was just so much hype coming to the show. And of course, I don't know if I've told you, I don't know if I've ever told you this story. So this is funny. So what happens with my travel agent, Dear Heart Bib, who I've used for the last 15 years, he's been unbelievable. He booked, all the guys to come in they land on a Thursday morning. So Kamali flies in from New Jersey, Titus flies in from Vegas. It was a United flight, and Titus was the last one on because his connection was kind of tight. So he walks down the thing. Now, I never thought of this when I booked the tickets because it's like a group booking. So let's say he's in 29A. So he walks down this full flight, and it's saying, please take your seat, get to your seat, hurry up. So he walks down the aisle, he turns left to look at 29A, and guess who's in 29B and sees Kamali and his wife. Right? And he just freezes. He goes, I ain't fucking sitting there. And the lady said, well, take your seat because it's the only seat left on the plane and we're about to taxi out of the airport. So he sits there and looks straight ahead for like 5 hours. I didn't speak, And by the end of the flight, they were kind of speaking, but not really, not best friends, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So they get off the plane, and then to make it worse, Titus, lied about his criminal record, get pulled into customs for about 5 hours. So I got a call from customs, and they said, hey, we had this guy here who used your name. In fact, they called me during the interview to see if it was legit that I was bringing him in to compete. Yes. They said, he's kind of angry. And I said, yep, he's that kind of guy. And then hours later, they called me and said, it's Dave here from Australian Customs. Just rang to let you know that your guest has left the airport. I said, well, I've got a driver on the way out. They said, you probably won't need that. He kind of slammed the door on his way out, tipped up a couple of tables. He lost his shit and he got in a cab. He nearly pulled the door off the cab. We're just calling you to say that he is the angriest person we've ever dealt with, and he's on his way to see you, and he's hungry. Good luck. And they hang up. So that's
things to come. Oh my God, right?
So then the cab pulls up out the front of the gym. We've got all this food cooked and everything else. He comes in. He was black. He was just so furious, and he motherfucker lost his shit. So we get to the show, and of course, when we did the call-outs, they made sure they called out Kamali and Titus together. Well, you can YouTube it. It's still the most watched prejudging of all time, and they went at it. And they're screaming at each other, "Lights out, baby!" and all this sort of stuff. And it was a fantastic prejudging. So that factor really made it. And then of course above them, you had Marcus and Chris and Dexter coming up through the ranks, and so without doubt that was our most exciting lineup we ever had. 2006 was also a great lineup because we had Vince Taylor doing a comeback at 48 where he got third and qualified for the Olympia. And then, go forward to like 2009 and 10 when Kai came in, after winning the Arnold, and arguably the best Kai we ever saw was 2009 in Melbourne because he dried out from Columbus and just was skinless, So there's been, all of them have been fantastic for different reasons, but 2004 was really a standout.
Tony, Kai Greene has announced that he'll be doing the Arnold Classic USA this year, which is a big shocker for a lot of people after he sat at the Olympia. Will we see him in Australia a week later?
I think so. There'll be announcements coming out when the lineups are announced, but it would be a pretty good move for him to come down 2 weeks later and do Australia. And then, of course, we've got Brazil 2 weeks later. So we've got 3 Arnold Classics in 4 weeks. So someone's going to make a lot of money. And I would suggest that we watch that space. I'm not saying too much right now.
Usually when there's a lot of money to be given away, Dexter Jackson's the guy on the other end of the check. But maybe this year it might be Kai. We'll have to see. Well, the announcement is terrific. Tony Doherty is officially the co-promoter of the Arnold Asia to add to his resume of the Arnold Australia. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. Tony, how are the Doherty 24/7 gyms doing? How many locations are we at this point?
We've got 6 locations, and they're doing great. It's springtime. Actually, it was the first day of summer here yesterday, so it's a beautiful time of year. You're probably freezing your balls off, but we're not. And Right. Well, it's a great time of year here, and the gyms are going well. You know, the contests are going well. Everything's good, mate. And of course, we had a great win for Australia with Josh Lenardowicz, who's a guy that I sponsor. Won 2 pro shows in a row, and he'll be doing the Arnold, at least Australian. He's put his name down for Columbus, so we'll wait for that list to come out. But he's going to be great, this kid, Dave. He's only just started, and I think he's really made some waves.
Yeah, he kind of shocked the world with those 2 wins. I don't think anyone expected that. He is the proverbial dark horse that we all talk about that we don't always see. So it's pretty exciting that he's coming out of Australia. He's probably the best guy out of Australia since, Lee Priest and Sonny Schmidt, I would say.
Definitely, you know, and neither of them ever won 2 shows in a row. So he's already done more than any Australian did in their whole career, having won back-to-back shows. And, you know, I think he hasn't anywhere near peaked. He's still very, very fresh in bodybuilding terms. And, you know, he'll do the Arnold show, and then he may even go and do the Levroni show in Poland. He just wants to compete. You know, he's not one of these guys like, oh, you know, take off a year and try and look bigger for the Olympia. He's like, you know what? I know it'll be better if I just keep competing. So by the time the Olympia comes around, you know, he's a no doubt a possible top 10 guy. I mean, he just beat William Bonac in San Marino, and we haven't seen the best of Josh yet. This is the first time he's ever stuck to his diet in his life. So now he's had a taste of victory. I would suggest watch that space, mate. He's going to be unbelievable.
Well, Tony, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule as of late and talking to us here on Live With. Best of luck with the Arnold Australia and, of course, Asia coming up in the middle of the year. And have a great holiday and New Year's if we don't talk to you.
Thank you very much, and all the best to you, Johnny, the team, Chris, all the listeners. Thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure.
All right. That'll take us to the end of another episode of Live With. I'm Dave Palumbo. We'll see you next time.